So continuing on with the having clause, let's take a look at the human resources.v employee department view. This is a consolidated view containing employee information and where they work. Now suppose we want to find only those departments that have at least 8 people working there. To start, we want to look at the department, right, because that's what we're going to be grouping on. We want to find the number of people, or the number of employees per department, and then filter those departments that had at least 8 people. So we're going to say select department as department name. Since we're finding the number of times the department appears, we're going to say count of star. So find the number of rows associated with each department. We're going to call that as employee count. Now I can't run this yet. I have to group by the department. And now when I run this, I get for each department how many employees are currently listed as belonging to that department. So again, the having clause filters out groups based on aggregate functions. So now we want to say having count of star greater than or equal to 8. And these are the 6 departments that have at least 8 employees. And you can think of it as the 6 departments that had at least 8 rows where that particular department was listed, which is essentially what the count is doing. We can use some of our other comparison operators. So we could say where the count was between 6 and 10, and we get these 9 departments that had anywhere between 6 and 10 employees. We can do, let's say, the in operator, so having count of star in 6 and 10. So how many departments had either 6 or 10 employees? And I can do that as well. So I'm not just restricted to those greater than or equal to. I can use the in and the between. I can't say I can think of a scenario where you're going to use the like operator, but some of the other ones you should be able to use no problem. So let's take a look at one more example. Going back to the sales.sales order header table, let's find for the year 2006 how many sales and the number of sales, so the total amount and the count, for each salesperson that occurred in the year 2006 from sales.sales order header. But let's only look at those salespeople that did $2 million in total sales and 75 sales. So the sales count was 75 and the sum of the total due, or the total sales amount, exceeded 2 million. To do that, we're going to say select star from sales.sales order header. And we said we only wanted to find or consider those sales that took place in 2006. So we're going to say where order date between 1/1/2006 and 12/31/2006. Now we'll keep it simple. We won't join out to the person.person table to get the salesperson's name. We'll just look at the salesperson ID. So salesperson ID, that'll be our first column in the select clause. And we said we wanted to find the total sales amount and then the sales count for each salesperson. Well, to find the total sales amount, we're going to sum on this total due column like we have been. We'll call it as total sales amount. And to find the total sales count, we can just do count of star as total sales count. So we're not done yet. Now we have to group by the salesperson ID, or else we get an error. For each salesperson, we find their total sales amount and their total sales count for sales that took place in the year 2006. Let's order our results by the total sales amount in descending order. There were a lot of sales with a null salesperson ID. So let's actually, just for the sake of this, let's ignore those. So in our where clause, we'll just say, and the salesperson ID is not null. So now we're only going to look at those sales that were associated with a salesperson or where the salesperson ID is not null. Now we said that we wanted to only consider those salespeople or only return those salespeople to our result set that did at least $2 million in sales amount and at least 75 sales. So since we're filtering out groups, which in this case is our salespeople, we have to use the having clause, which follows the group by clause. So we're going to say having sum of total due greater than 2 million and count of star greater than 75. So what salespeople did more than $2 million in sales and more than 75 total sales? I think I might have said earlier at least, so if it was at least, we could just do greater than or equal to. So when I execute this, I drop from 14 rows to 6. So these are the 6 salespeople that met both criteria, that did at least $2 million in sales and at least 75 total orders. So in this query, no, we haven't done any joins, but we've used all 6 of our SQL clauses. The other interesting thing we did here is in the having clause, we used a logical operator and. The same Boolean expression evaluation discussion that we had back with the where clause is applicable to the having clause. So the same order of operations and the same way that we can use parentheses to define the order in which we want those Boolean expressions evaluated, that process is the exact same for the having clause. So that'll wrap up the having clause. Definitely take a look at the practice problems to get some more experience. But again, the having and the where clause are very, very similar. The only difference is the where clause filters out rows of data based on column values, while the having clause filters out groups based on aggregate functions.